Alright friends, hi, my name is Walker and welcome back to All About Nails. We are going to today be talking about comparisons for all of the polishes from the Twinkling collection. And there are a couple Twinkling polishes in the shop, but there are also all of the polishes that I'm comparing them to. So this video will walk through each of the polishes in the collection, there are 12 of them, and the polishes from my collection that I thought were closest to them from Zoya. So this will hopefully give you a sense of whether you have a dupe in your collection or how unique these polishes are. As a quick note, a lot of these do have a lot of polishes that are very similar to them. I'm pulling the ones that I think are closest. And so if there's another polish in your collection, you're like, oh, I wonder how close that is. If I'm not including it here, it's because I didn't find it to be one of the closest 3. So that means it's probably pretty different. Let's dive into these 12 polishes. Holy moly, so much sparkle in this first one. So here's Katie in the middle, and I'm gonna compare it to Nala, which was the gold, I believe they called it a Unicorn Kisses topper from the summer collection in 2018, I think. And then Bar, which is a pixie dust, but it looked similar enough that I thought it was worth comparing, at least in the bottle. The goal of the pixie dust is obviously to get opaque on its own, whereas I think both Nala and Katie are meant to be worn as toppers. I guess Katie probably has the option to wear it as a topper versus wear it on its own, you can pick, but Bar is really meant to be worn on its own. So let's look at these up close. So I think you can see here that the golds are very different. Bar is a much more kind of neutral, sandy gold. Katie is that really like bright, almost like brassy gold. And then Nala is a little bit more of like a, I don't know, like a yellow gold maybe. This is 2 coats of all 3 of these polishes. All right, so I think this super sparkly one is unique in Zoya's collection. I don't think there's one quite like it, and so I'm not gonna swatch any of these ones, but they are really fun to look at like this. All right, here is Enza. This one is the macadamia cream it's described as, and then we have it compared here to Tatum, Avery, and Cho. And I really only brought Cho in because I know in some swatches Enza pulls quite a bit yellow toned, and it is definitely a little bit yellow toned, but I wanted to pull in another similar cream that is much more yellow toned to just show the difference. I think the closest ones are Taylor and Avery, but they're not identical. I am going to swatch them just because I feel like these polishes are so similar. It can be really hard for me at least to see differences in nudes. So I am going to swatch these 3 together just to kind of give you a better sense of what they look like. But down here on the swatch stick, you can see that Enza is pulling a little bit less almost like pink undertoned. It definitely has more of kind of like a brown, I would say like yellow brown undertone. These 2 are a little bit more pink toned, and then obviously Cho is much lighter, a little bit more white in it. All right, we're gonna start with the first coat of Taylor, and I have Enza on my middle and pinky fingers, and then I'm gonna do Taylor here. You can see it's, you know, kind of a, I don't know, thin formula, but the color looks a little bit similar. And then here on my ring finger, I'm gonna do Avery, which is a little bit more pink in the bottle, but it did look pretty close when I pulled it out. A second coat of Taylor, and this one I think is a little bit more white. It's not quite as deep and kind of like brown toned as Enza is. Even on that second coat it did get a little deeper, but not quite as deep. And Avery, yeah, it's looking a little bit more like pink toned, much lighter. So on the nail, I think these actually do look pretty different. So I think Enza is unique in my collection. I don't know how that's possible because Zoya has so many neutrals that look like this, but I do think that it is unique in my collection. I really liked Enza on my skin tone. I liked the kind of yellow undertone. It's a little bit deeper. It's not quite as like white based. I think of like more white based neutrals being good for the summer. And so I really actually kind of like this one. All right, here is Stef in the middle here. It is a super pale pink. I'm gonna call this one a neutral. I think it's not quite pink enough to be a pink. I think it's probably more of a neutral. I'm comparing it here to Joey and Avril. Joey is from the summer collection, the barefoot collection, and so a lot of people were asking about this comparison. I don't think that really there's any pinks that are quite as close to Stef in Zoya's collection. You can see that it looks a lot more neutral, a lot more kind of muted out compared to both Joey and Avril. And I would say Avril's like a pretty neutral pink, so I think that's kind of impressive. It almost has a little bit of like creaminess in it, like a creamy nude. So it's kind of a cross between a pink and a nude, I would say. And then some people also asked about Joss, which is from the fall collection. That one's obviously super different. And Dot, which is an old kind of classic light pink Zoya, but they're totally different. They're not similar at all. I do have a swatch photo on my Instagram that I'll post comparing these 2 kind of in a little Skittles mani, so I think that's fun to see. But I feel like I'm just gonna swatch these ones for you because they you know, I can see that they're different, but I want to show you on the nail how different they actually look. Sometimes polishes that look different in the bottle or on the stick when you get them on the nail actually look kind of similar, but I'm going to show you these three swatched. All right, so I'm starting with Joey here on my pointer finger, and I do have Stef on my middle and my pinky finger. Joey is, again, the one from the Barefoot collection. This one has a really nice formula. It looks pretty pink on this first coat even. And then I'm doing Avril here on my ring finger. Avril has a little bit of a thinner formula, so we're not going to see the true color on this first coat, but Joey does look pretty pink on that first coat, and on this second coat, it's just going to get even more pink. So it's very similar to Stef, but Stef is definitely much more of like a neutral polish. It's a little bit less kind of bright pink, and I think you can really see that color comparison here. And then Avril is going to build up a little bit on a second coat. I would normally do 3 coats of this one, but I'm going to just do 2 because I think you can already tell that it is also pretty different from Stef. Cool, so I think Stef is pretty unique in Zoya's collection. I really like the formula. It's a little bit thicker, and so I do find that it goes on a little bit nicer than some of the other light pinks in Zoya's collection. All right, so here is my, and this one here is Ruthie and Aubrey over here. And Ruthie is from last year's fall collection, the Element collection, so that's another pretty recent one. And a lot of people were excited about seeing comparisons for my because it looks like 100 other polishes in Zoya's collection, but I swear it's unique. So let's look at these 3 up close here. All right, so I think Aubrey is definitely a lot more purple. I would say my and Ruthie are probably the closest that I could find. They look definitely related. They're like very close sisters, but Ruthie has a little bit more of like a bright pink to it, whereas mine's a little bit more like dusty, almost like more of a rosy color comparatively. I'm not sure. And then Zoya obviously has a bunch more that are kind of more pink and more purple than this, but these are the closest. So I will show you them swatched because I think it will be helpful to see my and Ruthie on the nails. I really like my. Do you need my if you have a bunch of these other colors from Zoya? Maybe not, but I found it really lovely, and I think it's a wonderful one that I'm excited to wear in the fall and in the winter. Okay, so here I'm coming in for the first coat of Ruthie. And again, Ruthie in the bottle I think is the one that looked the closest to my, and it has a really nice formula. On one coat I'm getting almost all the way opaque. I really like this one from the Element collection, but you can see it's a little bit lighter, a little bit brighter pink than my. And then over here on my pinky, I'm going to do Aubrey. And Aubrey, I think is going to look a little bit darker and deeper, but let's see how it looks after this first coat is done. Yeah, okay, so you can see that Ruthie is definitely a bit more pink. I'll do a second coat just to, you know, bring it up a little bit plumper, but these are definitely different colors. I really enjoy this mix of colors though. I think they look really nice. Aubrey's also definitely darker, and so I definitely think that there's no dupes here, but they're all very lovely polishes. All right, so as you saw in those swatches, they definitely look different on the nails. There's some others that I want to pull in just real quick to show you. A lot of people asked about Joni. That one's definitely a bit more dark and a bit more purple. And then we have like Paige down here. I'm just going to pull some of these out so there's more space. Paige and Hera are definitely different as well. Paige has a lot more of that kind of winey purpleness to it, and Hera is a little bit more like a red mauve, kind of a little bit like brighter maybe is the right description there. So my is definitely a little bit more muted. It's more of like a kind of purpley brown color, and I think it's pretty unique in Zoya's collection, which is amazing because there's a lot of polishes like this. I have done a comparison series on kind of all of these kind of polishes from Zoya, so I'll link that up above if you want to see more in-depth comparisons on some of these other ones, but here is my. All right, next up is a comparison that I was really excited to do. This one is Tyrion in the middle here, and then we have Kelly and Genevieve. And as soon as I saw Tyrion, I knew that I wanted to compare it to Kelly, and a lot of you mentioned that as well in my swatch video. So let's look at those up close. All right, so here we go. Tyrion is in the middle, and I think that Tyrion is quite a few shades lighter than Genevieve. Genevieve is a super, super dark gray. Kelly is also pretty dark, and I think just like a hair darker than Tyrion. So I think these look really close. I don't think they're identical, but I do want to show you them swatched on the nails just because I think, again, they might look much closer once we get them on the nails. So let's take a look at them. Okay, we're going to start with Kelly here on my pointer finger, and like I mentioned, this one's a little bit older, and so is Genevieve, so they actually have not quite as nice formulas as Tyrion does. If you want to see Tyrion's formula, you can see it live swatched in my live swatching review of this collection. Kelly is looking pretty similar here, I would say. Genevieve also, it's kind of hard to tell on this first streaky coat, so let's see how they build up in 2 coats, and then we'll evaluate. Kelly, I would say, gets opaque in 2 coats though. I don't think, even though, you know, that first coat's a little watery, I definitely don't think you need more than 2 coats. And I think, wow, it looks pretty close to Tyrion. I would say Tyrion maybe has a little bit more blue in it, but they look pretty close. Genevieve is definitely darkening up quite a bit, and so Genevieve does, I think, look pretty different. But I'm gonna say that Tyrion and Kelly do look pretty close here. If you have Kelly, do you need Tyrion? I think that's up to you. Obviously, the formula on Tyrion is much, much better than on Kelly. Kelly's an older Zoya. That first coat was pretty sheer. You know, it's a little bit watery. Tyrion is really creamy. It's pretty much opaque in one coat. So I think it's up to you, you know, if you want to make that decision based on formula. I think all three of these are really lovely, and I'm not sad that I have all three of them. But if I was picking one, honestly, I'd probably go with Tyrion. Just that formula is really, really nice. All right, and now it's red time. Here we have Tanya in the middle. This one here is Ming, which is, I believe, from the 2018 winter collection. And then this one is Livingston. And I think that Livingston is the closest. Tanya is more of like an orangey toned red than a blue toned red. Ming is a little bit more blue toned, but in the bottle they look very similar, and on the swatch stick here, they look pretty similar. I will say Livingston and Tanya have a much closer undertone, so let's look at these three. All right, so if you're a red lover, you will probably see the difference in that undertone in Ming. It is a little bit more blue toned, but I think Tanya and Livingston look pretty close. I would say Livingston is maybe like a hair darker, and Tanya's a little bit brighter, maybe has a little bit more of that orange in it. So I do want to show you these ones swatched. I feel like we're swatching so many of these because so many of them have polishes that are very, very similar. So I do want to show you what these three look like. I will say their formulas are probably about equivalent, and so we're really just looking at color here. All right, I'm starting with Livingston here on my pointer finger. And again, I'm gonna do Livingston, and I have Tanya on my middle and pinky, and then I'm gonna do a first coat of Ming on my ring finger. I think on this first coat, Livingston looks pretty orange compared to Tanya, but I'm not going to, you know, judge it until I have two coats on. And Ming is looking pretty close, but maybe a little brighter than Tanya. Okay, I'm gonna put on a second coat of Livingston here. This one has a pretty nice formula, no complaints really. And I think, oh, it looks pretty similar. I would say maybe Tanya is a hair darker than Livingston. And for Ming, oh, they look pretty similar, but I do see a slightly different undertone. So I think Tanya and Livingston are pretty close. I don't know that you need both of them in your collection. I think they both have pretty good formulas. I wasn't like wowed by Tanya's necessarily. It was good, it was fine, but I think the other ones are pretty good too. Ming probably has the best formula of these three, but that's not that helpful. So I liked Tanya, I thought it was really nice, but again, I think it's pretty close to Livingston. And then the last one I want to show you is, a lot of you had asked about Margaret, which is from the fall collection. I just wanted to pull it in here. It's definitely a lot darker. It's a lot kind of, here, I'll show you the bottles. There we go. It's a lot deeper. So I think Margaret from the fall collection is definitely different from Tanya, and you could absolutely have both in your collection. They would serve very different purposes. All right, here we go. This is another one that people were really excited to see, and I was excited to do because I love these deeper purples. This one is Gabi here. Over here we have Monica, Lydia, and Lael. And these are, I don't know, yeah, definitely some differences in here, but also a lot of similarities. All right, so here we have all four of these lovely polishes. I think that the two that are closest are probably, I don't know, Gabi and Monica both have the similar like dustiness to them, and Lydia and Lael are a little bit like punchier, a little bit more vibrant, but they're all a very similar kind of tone of purple. Monica is probably the closest. So I do think I'm gonna swatch just all four of these because it's really hard to tell right here what they look like. So let's take a look at all four on the nails. All right, this one is a big one. We're starting with Monica here on my pointer finger, and we are gonna compare four polishes. So I have Gabi just on my middle finger there. I'm gonna do Monica here on the pointer finger, and I feel like Monica is a pretty nice formula. It's going on nice and deep. And then I'm gonna do Lydia here on my ring finger. And on first coat, I think these are all gonna look pretty similar, but I'm excited to kind of deepen them up a little bit. Monica is looking a little bit brighter, a little bit less dusty, and Lydia is looking a little bit more kind of like grapey purple almost. And this one on my pinky finger is going to be Lael. And Lael is definitely a little bit deeper in the bottle, but I'm curious how much that translates to the nail. So we're going to do a second coat of Monica. And again, I do think this one is probably pretty close. I'm seeing a slightly different undertone. Like I see a little bit more gray in Gabi almost. But for Lydia, this one is, I think, a little bit darker as well than Gabi's going to be, but they're going to be pretty close. I think Monica, Gabi, and Lydia are the closest here. And then Lael is definitely going to get really deep. So that one is similar in that it's a dark purple, but I would say that they are definitely different colors. And when you look at all 4 of these, I feel like it's kind of hard to tell which ones are closest. I think that Gabi and Monica are pretty close. I really enjoy wearing these colors though, so I am gonna be happy to have all 4 in my collection. I'm gonna let you make a decision about whether or not you actually need all 4 of these in your collection. I think like Lyell is pretty different from these 3. Lydia's pretty different. Monica and Gabi are really the closest, but they're both a lovely kind of dusty purple. All right, next up we have Sedona, which is here in the middle, and I have Edda down here. This is from the fall collection. This was one of my favorites from the fall collection. I loved it. And then over here, oops, we have Callista, and Callista is an older polish. I don't remember when it's from, but it's definitely not the last like 2 or 3 years, and it's really pretty. I love this one. It's wonderful for the fall, and it looks very similar to Sedona in the bottle. Up close here, I think my swatch stick of Callista doesn't look great. Callista is a little bit of a thinner formula, and so I think my swatch stick makes it look a little bit lighter than it is. So I'm definitely going to swatch these ones because I think on the nails they're going to look a lot closer. I did want to show you Edda because it's so recent. It's definitely a little bit more like of a brighter pink. There's more pink in it, whereas Sedona has more like brown tones in it. So I think these 2 are definitely different. They are similar, I guess, in effect, but I think that they're pretty different. So I did want to show you those. And then I also want to show you a couple others that are in Zoya's collection that are similar, you know, they're in the same family. So this is Blair and Gem, and I'm going to show you those up close with Sedona. So I didn't pull these in as kind of the 3 most close polishes because I think Blair is quite a bit more red and Gem is quite a bit more purple. So I do feel like these are pretty different, and I thought the closest ones were definitely Edda and Callista. So let's look at those 3 swatched on the nails. Okay, I'm starting with Edda on my pointer finger, and I have Sedona on both my middle and my pinky finger. I feel like I've said that 100 times in this video. I can't believe how many of these I needed to swatch. Definitely on this first coat, Edda is looking like pretty, you know, red toned, pretty bright, definitely not as much depth as Sedona has. And then on here, on my ring finger, I'm gonna do my first coat of Callista. And again, I think on the first coat, Callista is a little bit more sheer, so it looks a little bit more red toned, and it's a little bit different. Okay, and then I'm gonna deepen up my lovely Edda here. I think Edda is so gorgeous. And I'm going to see it a little, yeah, it's a little different still. It's not quite as brown as Sedona. It still looks a little bit more purple, which I think we expected from the bottle. Callista, on the other hand, is disappointing me because it looks so much like Sedona. It's looking pretty much identical. I would say it's maybe a little bit brighter, not quite as brown, but it's close. Let me know down below what you think about this because I love Sedona and I was a little bit disappointed to realize how close it was to Callista, but I think they're both really pretty. All right, we are trucking along. Here is Rosa. This is one that I was excited to do some comparisons of as well because I feel like I have a million polishes that look like this. Turns out I only have like 3 or 4 actually that look like this, but we're gonna compare it here to Mandy over here and May over here. And these 3 are super similar, so before I swatch them and show you more about them, I want to show you 2 that I think Rosa is very reminiscent of, and a lot of us kind of remembered as soon as we saw it, but it's actually pretty different from. So here is Fallon, which is from the Party Girls collection, which is the winter collection in 2017. And then here is Taryn, which is from the Jubilee collection, which is last year's winter collection. So they're definitely a bit deeper, but let's take a look at these 3. I do think these 3 look super similar, at least on this swatch stick, so I'm definitely gonna swatch them. Okay, I'm gonna put May here on my pointer finger. This one again has slightly larger glitters in it than Rosa does. It's not really a metallic. I mean, maybe it's metallic, but it definitely has a slightly different finish than Rosa is. And then on my ring finger, we're gonna see Mandy. And this one looks, I think, probably the closest in color in the bottle. I would say May is almost like a little bit more orange or like corally pink, whereas I think Mandy is a pretty identical color. It just has, again, a slightly different finish because you can see some of those particles. So I see May as being pretty different here on the nail, but I do see Mandy being pretty similar, at least in color, if not in finish perfectly. So you might even like Mandy a little bit more than you like Rosa. All right, so like I said, these are gonna look super similar on the nail. They just have slightly different, you know, particles in them. I definitely don't think that you need all 3 in your collection if you have some of these other ones. All right, next up is one of my favorite shades from this collection. This is Jen. Jen is a super gorgeous blue metallic. I love it, love it, love it. And the moment that I saw this one, I wanted to compare it to Song down here, and then I also thought I'd bring in Estelle just for comparison's sake because it's a somewhat similar blue, but not really. Song is definitely the closest. Let's look at these up close. And I think on these swatch sticks, you can kind of see that Song is just a little bit less sparkly, like it's a little bit of a lighter base and then it doesn't quite have the same sparkle glitter in it. Jen has this really dense shimmer of that bright blue. So I do want to show you these swatched on the nail just because I think it's a little hard to see up here, but they're very, very pretty, both of them. I don't even know how you can decide which one is more beautiful. First up, we're going to see Estelle here on the pointer finger, and Estelle definitely has a metallic finish, but again, I was curious about the color here, so I think it looks pretty different on this first coat than than Jen does. Song is going to go on my ring finger, and Song has a slightly different formula. It's not quite as like sparkly from the depths. I don't know how to describe it. And I'm seeing a little bit of a different color here. So Estelle's definitely different, but I see in Song probably it's not quite as like rich. The base is maybe not quite as deep and dark. I feel like there's maybe some black in Jen's base, but they're both really pretty. But again, I'm gonna say they're pretty different. I think Jen just has a little bit more of this like depth and gorgeousness to it. All right, next up we have Alicia here in the middle. This one is so sparkly. And then I'm bringing back in Estelle because I think it's pretty close to this one as well. And then I'm bringing in River because it was probably the closest of all the polishes in my collection. So if you look down here, I think that Estelle is the closest in terms of color, but the finish is dramatically different. So we'll look up close for that. And then River, I think is probably closer in the finish. It's not identical, but it's pretty similar to like the lighter parts of Alicia. And so I definitely saw some parallels here. All right, so Estelle is definitely more of a metallic, whereas Alicia has those like very vibrant, sparkly silver glitters that you can definitely see on the nails. And then River, again, I think it's kind of similar in color, like in the brighter color, but the formula is really different. It has a very subtle kind of micro glitter, maybe. It's like very tiny pieces of blue, whereas Alicia has those silver pieces that kind of gleam off your nail and get stuck all over your cuticles. So I'm not going to swatch these ones because I don't think they're that similar, but I'm going to show you a couple others just for reference. So here are Tarte and Tallulah. I think that they're probably similar in color, but again, these ones are more shimmery versus like having glitter particles in them, and so I do think they look pretty different on the nails, and the color is pretty different, right? Alicia and Tarte are maybe close in color, but none of these are exact dupes for one another, but look at how beautiful these are. Oh, they're all so pretty. All right, here we go. This is the last one. This is Jet right here, and I'm just showing you some recent grays and a recent flaky. This is Theo from the spring collection in 2019 and Ashton from the fall collection in 2019. And then the one that's probably closest, closest kind of in a generous sense of the word, is Trixie. I found that really Zoya didn't have any other grays that were quite the same color as Jet. I think because Jet is actually like a pretty bright silver in here. It's definitely, not a gray, it's a silver, and I think Zoya has some other kind of gray metallics, but I found Trixie to be probably the closest, but Trixie has a very different formula. It doesn't have those kind of flakies in it. It's definitely a much more like white silver, bright silver. So yeah, I don't know. I thought I'd show you the other two that were released this year just so you can see how they compare, but they're obviously pretty different, even though I think Theo and Jet probably have the same flakies in them. But I'm not going to swatch any of these because they look pretty different. So Jet is definitely unique in Zoya's collection. I personally don't know if I think that's a good thing. I don't love Jet, but if you're a Jet fan, you're going to be happy that you probably don't have anything else like it from Zoya in your collection. Awesome, thank you so much. Let me know down below which of these surprised you the most. Which one did you expect to have a dupe that didn't? Which one did you expect to be unique that wasn't unique? Let me know, I love to hear from you. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you wanna sit down and hang out and chat about nail polish again sometime, then consider hitting that subscribe button. Awesome, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.